Alright, so let's be real for a second. Keeping your party in top shape in Wuthering Waves isn't exactly a walk in the park. You've got a ton of characters to choose from, each with their own strengths, quirks, and flashy abilities, and it's super easy to get lost in the mix. That's where a good old tier list comes in handy. But hey, before we dive in, remember this isn't the ultimate truth carved in stone. It's just a guide to help you figure out where the real power lies and how to squeeze the most out of your team. Now, the way I've set things up is pretty simple. We're breaking characters down into 3 main battlefield roles, and I'll walk you through where each of them lands on the power scale. Think of it like a roadmap. Some picks are absolute monsters that can carry fights on their own, while others shine best when you slot them into the right team. So grab your favorite snacks, sit back, and let's jump into the Wuthering Waves tier list. I'm quickly moving on to the video, and I'm ranking characters in Wuthering Waves. Before we start, if you enjoy these types of list videos, don't forget to like the video and subscribe. Enjoy watching. The characters in this tier are, in order from top left to bottom right, Lingyang, Yangyang, and Taochi. You ever look at a character in Wuthering Waves and think, wow, you are trying so hard, but the game just will not let you shine? Yeah, welcome to the world of C tier. These are the underdogs, the bench warmers, the folks you feel a little bad for but still can't justify building. Let's talk about them, because even though they are not breaking any damage charts, they are still part of the family. First up, we have Lingyang. Now on paper, he sounds cool, right? A Glacio fighter with potential for flashy damage. But here's the problem. His peers in the 5-star category are just leaving him in the dust. They are out here dropping massive area of effect nukes, while Lingyang is like, hey guys, I am trying my best. And to make things worse, he does not even have a proper Glacio support to back him up right now. Without that synergy, his damage feels, let's be polite and call it underwhelming. Then there is Yangyang, the very first 4-star character that everyone gets for free. She is like your first bicycle, fun and useful at the start, but once you get your hands on a motorbike, you are not going back. Sure, she can group enemies with her arrow skills and do some decent early game damage, but the moment you pull literally any stronger sub DPS that can buff damage, Yangyang starts collecting dust on the roster screen. She is the definition of thanks for the memories, but we are moving on. Now let's talk about Taochi. This one is actually interesting because with the arrival of Jinxie, she finally carved out a little niche for herself. She can step into a sub DPS role by amplifying resonance skills and sneaking in some quick switch damage with her resonance liberation. Sounds promising, right? But here's the catch. Her kit is a bit of a mess. Her forte scales one way, her shield scale another, and it feels like she is constantly at war with herself. If her numbers lined up across the board, she could have been a fantastic hybrid of sub DPS and support. Instead, she is more like, almost there, but not quite. What is kind of tragic about these 3 characters is that you can see the potential in each of them. Lingyang just needs proper support, Yangyang just needs a serious upgrade, and Taochi just needs consistent scaling. They are like that group project team where everyone has good ideas, but no one can quite execute them right. You want to cheer them on, but at the same time, you know they are not getting you the A grade. At the end of the day, C tier is not completely useless. If you love these characters, play them. They can still carry you through plenty of content, and sometimes style points matter more than raw power. But when it comes to pure efficiency, they just cannot compete with the heavy hitters sitting in A and S tier. Think of them like your quirky friends, fun to hang out with, but maybe not the ones you call when you need to move a couch. The characters in this tier are, in order from top left to bottom right, Jiangxin, Alto, Yuanwu, Chixia, Baiji, Yuhu, and Lumi. You know what is funny about the B tier? It is basically the land of almost. These characters are not terrible. In fact, some of them are really fun to use. But compared to the heavy hitters above them, they are like the kid who runs really fast in gym class, until the actual sprinters show up. Let's start with Jiangxin. Now, Jiangxin is that one person in the group project who says, I can do both the slides and the research. And to be fair, she actually can. She can serve as a main damage dealer by grouping enemies and throwing out solid area of effect damage. But wait, she can also hop into a sub DPS role by buffing resonance liberation damage with her outro skill. That versatility is nice, but here's the problem. Being a jack of all trades in Wuthering Waves means you are also a master of none, and that's why she has slowly slipped into the middle ground of the meta. Moving on to Rover Arrow. This one is actually kind of sad, because their kit is really interesting. They are amazing at applying negative effects on enemies, but right now the roster of characters that actually benefit from that is so small. It is like owning a fancy coffee machine, but only having one pod to use with it. As of version 2.2, Arrow Rover is basically just a support with weak damage. But here is the catch. Future updates could easily push them higher. So think of them as a long-term investment. Right now, B tier. Tomorrow, who knows? Then we have Alto. Honestly, he looks great on paper as a sub DPS. He buffs arrow damage and can hold his own in combat, but here is the kicker. He gets completely outclassed by sub DPS like Mortefi, who can deal damage even when he is off the field. And in this game, having damage continue while you swap is priceless. Alto is like that coworker who is helpful when they are at the office, but the moment they clock out, everything stops. Now let's talk about Yuanwu. He is another sub DPS who actually plays pretty similarly to Mortefi. He dishes out coordinated electro damage even when he is off-field, which is great. On top of that, he can reduce enemy vibration strength, which is basically that toughness bar you see under bosses. The downside? The effect only works if enemies stay inside his circle of influence. And let's be real, mobile enemies in Wuthering Waves love nothing more than running out of your carefully placed circle just to spite you. Chixia is up next, and she is one of those characters who shines in the right scenario. She is quick, she is flashy, and she excels at mowing down groups of enemies with ease. Against single bosses, she can also perform really well if you know how to dodge and reposition. But when you are swarmed by mobs, her mobility suddenly becomes a liability. If you misstep, she gets overwhelmed fast. Basically, she is like that player who looks like a superstar in one match, and then the very next game they are struggling to keep up. Alright, let's get into Baiji, the healer everyone has in their back pocket when they do not have the big names like Shorekeeper or Verena. And you know what? She is not bad at all. She can burst heal using both her Resonance skill and Liberation, and she continuously heals while buffing the next character you swap in for a solid 36 seconds. On top of that, unlocking her first inherent skill lets her provide attack boosts. Sounds solid, right? Well, here is the catch. Her buffs only apply to the next character, not the whole party. That makes rotations clunky compared to Verena, who just says, everybody gets the buff. Next up, Yoo-Hoo, the healer support hybrid with, let's just say, an identity crisis. On paper, she can heal, she can buff, she can reduce vibration strength efficiency, and she can do a little bit of everything. But the way she does it is through a kit-based random system. That means you are never quite sure what buff you are going to get, which makes team rotations messy. Sure, you can try to force certain effects, but 9 times out of 10, the results are unpredictable. And to make matters worse, her outro skill only buffs coordinated attacks, which only a handful of characters even use. So yeah, consistency is not her strong suit. Finally, we have Lumi. She is a straightforward sub-DPS with some solid numbers. Her outro skill can amplify Resonance skill damage, which is definitely useful. Her Fort Circuit and Resonance Liberation also hit pretty hard when charged up. But here's the issue. When you are just using her basic attacks in her 2 light modes, her damage feels like it is dragging. She really needs her Forte Circuit full to make an impact. In short, she is good, but she requires setup to shine, which makes her less reliable than other options. So if you are looking at the B tier as a whole, what does it really mean? It is not bad. These are not throwaway characters. They are simply situational. They are good enough to carry you in most content, but they will not blow your mind or redefine your team. In fact, a lot of B tier characters have something in common. They are either waiting for future synergies, or they are just slightly worse versions of existing top tier roles. Jiang Xin wants to be both a main damage dealer and sub-DPS. Rover Arrow is waiting for the right characters to show up. And Yoo-Hoo is praying to the RNG gods for consistency. Another thing about B tier is that they are often easier to use than top tier characters. Chixia is a great example. Pick her up and you are instantly zipping around and blasting enemies without needing a PhD in mechanics. Baiji too is simple and reliable, as long as you accept her limitations. So if you are not a hardcore meta chaser, these characters can still feel great. And let's not forget, they can absolutely shine in the right team composition. For example, Yuan Wu can feel clunky against mobile enemies, but put him against a big boss that cannot move much, and suddenly his circle-based debuff is amazing. Same goes for Alto. Pair him with the right arrow damage dealer, and he feels much stronger than his tier suggests. It also helps that a lot of these characters are fun. And that is something we do not talk about enough in tier lists. You are not playing Wuthering Waves just to climb imaginary rankings. You are playing to enjoy yourself. And if a B-tier character is your favorite, then who cares if they are not the most efficient choice? The real takeaway is that B-tier characters are the comfort zone of the game. They are not flashy meta definers, but they also will not let you down. Think of them as the middle child, maybe overlooked sometimes, but secretly the one keeping the family together. So next time you see someone rolling their eyes at a B-tier pick, just remember, consistency, fun, and flexibility matter just as much as raw power. And sometimes, the B-tier benchwarmers are the ones that save the day when your shiny S-tier character gets knocked out. The characters in this tier are in order from top left to bottom right: Calcharo, Encore, Rover Spectro, Rover Havoc, Rover Arrow, Mortefi, and Danjin. You know that sweet spot between meta-defining monster and please don't make me use them? That is exactly where A tier lives. These are the characters who may not dominate the entire game, but they are consistent, reliable, and, in the right hands, downright terrifying. Let's go through them one by one because trust me, there is a lot of firepower sitting in A tier. First up, we have Calcharo. This guy is your classic Electro main damage dealer, and oh boy, he does his job well. His skill and Liberation pump out some seriously high numbers, and with the arrival of Yinlin, his stock skyrocketed. Why? Because Yinlin is the sub-DPS partner he has been waiting for. Together, they basically zap anything that dares to move. On his own, Calcharo is good. With the right support, he is scary. Now let's talk about Encore. If there was ever a character that screamed, "I am here for one thing and one thing only," it is her. Encore is all about pure fusion damage, nothing else. Once she enters Cosmos Rave, her damage output is absurd. The only problem? She is squishy. Cosmos Rave has zero crowd control, so if you are taking hits, that glorious 10-second window of destruction suddenly turns into a panic dodge simulator. But if you can stay alive, she is a wrecking ball. Next is Rover Spectro, and this one is fascinating. Spectro Rover is basically the jack-of-all-trades character, giving you a little taste of both sub-DPS and main DPS roles. Their outro skill even comes with a time stop, which is as stylish as it is useful. The problem? In a meta where roles are becoming more specialized, being versatile actually works against them. They are great, but not quite top of the top, because pure main damage dealers or sub-DPS units just outshine them in efficiency. Then we have Rover Havoc, who is almost the opposite. This character knows exactly what they are about: big damage and flashy bursts. Dark Surge mode is where Havoc Rover really comes alive, with massive basic attack damage and a devastating resonance liberation. The key, however, is dodging like a pro, so you can maximize uptime during that Dark Surge window. Add in their synergy with Dreamless, and suddenly you have a character that can melt both single enemies and mobs alike in seconds. Alright, let's move on to Mortefi, and honestly, this guy is a sleeper powerhouse. He is a sub-DPS who specializes in coordinated fusion attacks. That means even when he is chilling off-field, he is still dishing out damage as long as you are attacking enemies. This off-field value is huge because it stacks with your on-field DPS, making fights end much faster. And the fact that he is a 4-star unit means he is relatively easy to pick up. Pair him with someone who uses heavy attacks, and it is like having a fusion machine gun running in the background. Now let's talk about Danjin, the free-to-play player's dream. Danjin can pump out absurd amounts of damage if, and this is a big if, you can manage her health drain mechanic. She trades HP for power, which makes her incredibly risky, but also very rewarding. Against weaker enemies, she is a beast. Against tougher bosses, player skill becomes critical. If you are not careful, she can just collapse mid-fight. But if you know what you are doing, she feels like an A-tier powerhouse that can rival higher rarity characters. What I really love about the A-tier as a whole is that each character brings something unique to the table. They are not just here to fill slots. They each have mechanics or synergies that make them worth building, even if they are not the meta kings. Calcharo has the electro nukes, Encore has fusion explosions, and Mortefi has that priceless off-field contribution. At the same time, A-tier characters often ask more from the player than S-tier ones. Encore requires dodging discipline, Danjin needs health management, and Havoc Rover asks for precise timing to make the most out of Dark Surge. In other words, they reward skillful play. If you want to flex your mechanical skills, A-tier characters are perfect for that. And while Rover Spectro and Rover Havoc both live here, they show how flexible the Traveler can be. Spectro Rover leans into utility and versatility, while Havoc Rover is raw, chaotic damage. It is honestly refreshing that both can stand in A tier, but for totally different reasons. The other nice thing is accessibility. Mortefi being a 4-star and Danjin being free makes this tier feel more approachable for casual or budget players. You do not need to wail out to build an A-tier roster. You just need to understand their kits and put in some practice. At the end of the day, A-tier is where the game really opens up for creative team building. These are the characters who may not always headline tier lists, but they can absolutely carry you through endgame content with the right setup. Sometimes the most fun you will have is not with the broken S-tier options, but with the versatile A-tier squad that asks you to play smarter. So if you are rocking an A-tier team, do not sweat it. You are still sitting on some of the strongest, most enjoyable units in Wuthering Waves. They may not break the game in half, but trust me, they are strong enough to make you feel like a hero every time you log in. The characters in this tier are, in order from top left to bottom right, Jiyan, Yinlin, Changli, Shangli Yao, Rocha, Cantarella, Lupa, Frolova, and Sanhua. You know when you look at a character and just go, yep, that's the one that's going to carry me through literally everything? That's the energy of S tier. These are the elite picks, the monsters of the meta, the ones who make content feel like easy mode once you slot them into your team. Let's break them down one by one, because trust me, every name on this list deserves respect. Starting strong with Jiyan. Honestly, he's one of the smoothest main damage dealers in the game. He doesn't just shred single targets. His area of effect damage is top tier too. And his ultimate? That thing groups up smaller enemies, basically giving you built-in crowd control. With the release of Whimpering Wastes, he found a niche that boosted his value even more. Jiyan is that reliable, versatile pick. You pull him, you build him, and he will never let you down. Then we've got Yinlin, and wow! She's an absolute sub-DPS queen. Not only does she boost both liberation damage and electro damage, but she also dishes out electro-coordinated attacks. Translation? She's dealing damage even when she's chilling off the field. This passive damage output makes her ridiculously valuable, and when paired with electro-heavy teams, she just skyrockets in worth. You want a sub-DPS that feels like an extra carry? Yinlin's your girl. Moving on to Changli, the fusion powerhouse. She is all about unleashing massive damage with her stacked fort circuit. What makes her even scarier is that she can buff her own attack after using her ultimate, essentially turning herself into her own cheerleader. Sure, she can technically act as a sub-DPS thanks to her outro skill, but honestly, why would you ever do that? As a main DPS, she's insane, and putting her on the field is basically giving your enemies a death sentence. Now let's talk Xiangli Yao. He's one of those characters that feels incredible once you learn how to use him. His kit slows enemy movement, which makes dodging and controlling fights much easier, and his damage output is monstrous when you're buffing Resonance Liberation damage. Stack him with the right echoes and weapons, and he becomes a machine. He does rely heavily on his liberation, so rotations matter, but when you get it right, he's devastating. Roxia is next, and let me just say, this character makes Havoc teams shine. She boosts both basic attack and Havoc damage, which immediately makes her a premium sub-DPS. Add in her grouping ability, and suddenly your main damage dealer is slicing through enemies like butter. Her personal damage isn't bad either, which only makes her more valuable in modes like Tower of Adversity, where time is everything. The one downside? She's kind of locked into Havoc comps. Outside of that, her value dips a bit. Then there's Lupa, and this one is a bit special. She's the fusion team enabler, the final puzzle piece that pushes mono fusion teams to new heights. If you're running a full fusion comp, she's basically mandatory. The catch? She doesn't do much outside of that lane. So yes, her power is absurd in her niche, but she's also one of the most restrictive characters in terms of team building. If you're a fusion fan, she's S tier. If not, her usefulness feels pretty narrow. Sanhua is another heavy hitter, but she works more as an elite sub-DPS. Her claim to fame is the basic attack damage deepen she applies for 14 seconds to whoever swaps in next. That alone makes her rotation value incredible. She can deal solid damage herself too, though she's heavily reliant on detonating her ice structures with heavy attacks. Get that rhythm down, and she's a fantastic piece in a lot of different teams. Now we arrive at Cantarella, and honestly, she's a Havoc all-star. She's not just about damage, she also provides sustain and healing, which means she frees you up to run a second sub-DPS instead of a traditional support. That flexibility is massive. On top of that, she amplifies resonance and Havoc damage, and she chips in extra damage through her off-field coordinated attacks. In mono Havoc comps, she's basically mandatory. And in Frolova teams, she's the engine that makes the entire Echo skill damage setup work. Without her, those comps just don't exist. Speaking of which, let's talk about Frolova. She's a unique Havoc DPS that scales off Resonance skill and Echo skill damage. A very niche combo, but one with high payoff. She has off-field potential, which makes her flexible, but to unlock her full strength, you need heavy investment. Her weapon is basically mandatory, and without it, she feels incomplete. Even with investment, she struggles to reach the insane heights of characters like Kartethia or Zani. That said, if you're willing to pour resources into her, she's still an S-tier beast. What ties all these characters together is that they don't just do their job. They elevate entire team comps. Jian isn't just a damage dealer, he's a versatile all-rounder. Yinlin isn't just a sub-DPS. She's off-field damage on steroids. Lupa makes fusion comps viable, Cantarella makes Havoc teams flexible, and Rachia ensures time-limited content is a breeze. They aren't just strong individually, they define strategies. That's why S-tier is so stacked. It's not just about raw numbers, it's about impact. These are the units that warp the meta around them. If you build them, they're going to open up entire playstyles, and you'll start structuring your team around their strengths. And let's not forget accessibility. Characters like Yinlin and Rachia shine in almost every team they touch, while others like Lupa and Frolova need more specific setups. That's the balance of S-tier. You've got universal monsters and niche gods, but either way, they dominate their respective roles. The key difference between S-tier and the rest is simple: consistency. You can throw these characters into nearly any scenario, boss fights, mob clear, endgame challenges, and they'll perform. Even their downsides are often just situational quirks rather than real weaknesses. So, if you've pulled any of these S-tier legends, congratulations! You've basically unlocked cheat codes for Wuthering Waves. Whether you want all-around damage, team buffs, or niche-enabling powerhouses, the S-tier is where dreams are made. And remember, this isn't just about climbing leaderboards or beating content faster. Playing S-tier characters feels good. It's stylish, it's powerful, and sometimes it just feels nice to sit back, unleash your resonance liberation, and watch the battlefield explode. That's the magic of the top tier. The characters in this tier are, in order from top left to bottom right, Verena, Jinxie, Zheji, Shorekeeper, Camellia, Carlotta, Phoebe, Brant, Zani, Chacona, and Kartethia. If S-tier characters feel like strong enough to carry, then S+ tier is basically the definition of unstoppable. These units aren't just meta-relevant, they are the ones that make entire fights feel like a tutorial. Buckle up because the following characters are the real deal. Starting with Verena, the queen of party-wide utility. She heals, buffs, and even periodically performs coordinated attacks that deal spectro damage while keeping your active character healthy. She might lack the crit rate and crit damage buffs of Shorekeeper, but her off-field damage potential is nothing to scoff at. Basically, she's the Swiss Army knife of S+ tier, doing everything a team could need. Next up, Jinxie, pure main damage dealer perfection. Her skill and resonance liberation hit like a truck, and her multipliers are absurdly high. There's almost no enemy that survives her fury. If you're looking for raw, face-melting spectro damage, Jinxie is the one you want front and center. Zheji deserves some love too. She's the ultimate sub-DPS support for anyone building around Resonance skill users, providing buffs and amplifying Glacio damage. Currently, she's best in slot for Jinxie and Carlotta, making her incredibly versatile. Off-field value? Check. On-field synergy? Double check. Zheji is the glue that holds elite DPS comps together. Then there's Shorekeeper, basically the MVP of almost every team. She grants crit buffs to allies in her Resonance Liberation field while continuously healing them. Add damage amplification, knockdown recovery, and KO prevention to the mix, and you've got a support unit that is almost mandatory in any serious setup. If Verena is Swiss Army knife, Shorekeeper is the maxed out, gold-plated multi-tool. Moving on to Camellia, a Havoc DPS that thrives on AoE combos. Her kit is straightforward and powerful, and she even comes with a free sub-DPS, making her team extremely easy to build. If you want a Havoc character that is effective without pulling your hair out over complicated setups, Camellia is a no-brainer. Then we've got Carlotta, the premier Glacio DPS. She delivers consistent burst damage that scales off Resonance skill, and when paired with Zheji, her damage potential skyrockets. Having the perfect supporting team makes Carlotta feel nearly unstoppable. She sits comfortably among the best DPS units in the game. Phoebe is another Spectro DPS monster. She deals massive Spectro damage as long as enemies are affected by Spectro Frazzle. Even without a dedicated sub-DPS, she performs admirably, and she can also act as a sub-DPS herself by amplifying Frazzle and reducing enemy Spectro damage resistance. With Zani's release, Phoebe now has even more utility, making her the premier Frazzle sub-DPS. Speaking of Brant, he's a fusion character who brings team-wide buffs and sustain without sacrificing personal damage. He converts energy recharge into attack, and paired with Changli, unlocks insane potential. Even free-to-play teams benefit from Brant's outro skill combined with his Forte circuit. He's a support and enabler rolled into one sleek package. Zani is the newest Spectro powerhouse. She fits perfectly into Frazzle teams without overlapping Jinxie, and her damage rivals Jinxi's in optimal setups. On top of that, she comes with a free sub-DPS option in Rover, so even players who don't have Phoebe can take advantage. Her value just keeps climbing. Chiakona is a versatile arrow unit with excellent buffing and debuffing potential. She applies multiple instances of arrow erosion and Spectro Frazzle, which synergizes beautifully with Kartathea. With the release of Kartathea, Chiakona's kit has fully bloomed, and she's suddenly essential in multiple team comps. Now let's talk Kartathea, arguably the best arrow DPS in the game. She dishes out insane damage and can self-apply arrow erosion without a dedicated applicator. Scaling off HP, her potential is basically limitless. She has overtaken Jiyan as the premier arrow DPS and may hold that crown for a long time. What makes S+ tier units truly special is that they don't just do one thing well, they define team compositions. Verena and Shorekeeper cover heals and buffs, Jinxie and Carlotta dominate as main DPS, Zheji and Chiakona provide insane support, and Kartathea and Phoebe redefine what damage potential even means. Another key point is versatility. While some S+ characters like Lupa in S tier were niche, S+ units generally excel across multiple scenarios. Zheji can scale for both Jinxie and Carlotta. Verena works in almost every team, and even Brant finds a place in both fusion-focused and free-to-play setups. These characters are also the ones who make rotations, synergies, and skill timing actually feel rewarding. It's not just about pressing buttons. It's about knowing when to unleash Resonance Liberations, coordinate Frazzle setups, or time buffs to maximize damage. In other words, skill expression is at its peak with S+ tier. And of course, accessibility matters too. Many S+ characters come with free sub-DPS options, or synergize perfectly with units you already have, meaning you don't always have to pull an entire roster to see them shine. They are strong, rewarding, and often make every fight feel cinematic. At the end of the day, S+ tier is where Wuthering Waves truly gets fun. These characters make battles feel epic, rotations feel satisfying, and team building feel like a puzzle coming together perfectly. Slot in a couple of these units, and suddenly, endgame content feels like a showcase of your mastery rather than a grind. The video ends here. See you in another video. Don't forget to subscribe.